Hi, once again, welcome to this video presentation series, Making Sense of Poetry, particularly unseen poems. Here we go with number 3, and this time we're looking at imagery. And here it comes, and a very reluctant arrow comes across the screen to point at it, just in case you don't know what imagery looks like. There we go. Here's a reminder of the full list of options I gave you that we shall be looking at. So far, we've examined the physical appearance of the poem, including punctuation and also vocabulary, and now we're going to look, as promised, in imagery. That arrow is really reluctant, isn't it? Now, we start with what might seem at first a rather odd notion. Just wait for the screen to fade in. I want to use for this topic two things. A chicken and an egg. A cracking egg by the looks of it. I'm not interested in which comes first, but I also need a cute farmyard scene. With chickens in the foreground, a horse in the background, and a couple of cans from careless ramblers, just to give it a contemporary feel. Now, here comes the new concept. It is the pecking order of imagery. That's an odd term, isn't it? It's an informal way of expressing the mouthful dominance hierarchy, which states that there will be a dominant item at the top of a particular pile, a subordinate next, and so on until you get to the very bottom of the pile. In imagery, there's also a pecking order, and at the bottom of the particular pile is a simile, which, as its name expresses, says that one thing is like another. Here's an image of the chicken house door, and I press the button, and there's a simile, an egg with a rather small chicken on top. Now, here are a couple of examples of similes. Here we go with the first one. This steak is tough as old boots. Two things are compared. They are made separate by the like, is, or as, and that's why the simile is regarded as the lowest form of imagery. On the right side of the equation, there doesn't have to be any total collection between that and the thing compared. For example, you could say his nose was as red as a raspberry, but that doesn't imply that his proboscis has any raspberry-like features. It isn't soft and sugary, it just happens to look similar. A simile, then, is a comparison between two things in which the main item, here, the steak, is compared with another item, old boots, which has one feature in common with the main item. In other words, toughness. The simile is also something which tends to appear just once in a text. Here is number 2. A sleeper in the bed is compared to a log, but only to one characteristic of the log, that it doesn't tend to move around a lot. Note that the main item, the sleeper, and the thing compared are regarded as separate one from the other. The word like indicates that. We're not saying, for example, that the sleeper is lying flat on the ground, covered with bark and crawling with various unpleasant insects. Not at all. Now, one more comparison between one thing and another. A simile does not have to compare like with like. Let me demonstrate with this young lady. And no smoking. Please, the young lady is here just for illustrative purposes. Assuming she is, quote, my love, let us compare her with a flower a red rose. Bung in a little comparative phrase, as or like, and you see what I mean. But any passing resemblance between her and a rose is nothing compared to the differences. The rose is bright red with green leaves and nasty-looking prickles. So, let's examine what's going on here. First, as we have seen, the simile tends to compare one feature with another. And in this case, what the poet is trying to compare her with is an ideal, and just one aspect of that ideal. I quote from Robert Burns. The words are his, the awful Scottish accent is mine. My love is like a red, red rose. And in the world of garden plants, the rose is regarded as a kind of ideal of beauty. Ignore the green bits, particularly the sharp prickles. And that's not all. The poem goes on to make another comparison. Here we go. My love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. This time she is described in terms of the ideal of sweet music. So, to sum up, similes keep the subject and the thing compared with it separate. They tend to compare one feature of a thing, person, with another. And also they do not tend to be long-lasting in their input. Now, in order to see what's up next, we need to take another peep at the barn door, the chicken house door. Here we go. Next up, metaphor. An egg with a slightly larger chicken perched on top of it. If a simile says A is like or resembles B, metaphor says A is B, merging the two more closely together. To demonstrate this, let me show you our theatre stage with a character about to say the lines of one of Shakespeare's most famous monologues. No, not the one about to be or not to be. This one is a bit different. This is an extract of Jake's famous speech from the comedy As You Like It. As you'll hear, Jake's is the arch cynic. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like a snail unwillingly to school. I'll slip over the next two, the lover sighing like a furnace, and then the soldier full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honour, and so forth. And we come to the portly man of the law, which shows that he's settled down in the community and got a solid, respectable place there. And then the justice, in fair round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe, and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice, turning again towards a childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. And finally, the old man, last scene of all that ends this strange eventful history is second childishness, a mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Sans, by the way, means without teeth, eyes, and so on and so forth. What Jakes is saying is that we are all acting out a sequence of roles over which we have little or no control. So far then we have described the simile and the metaphor. And on the cheerful note of the man sans teeth, sans eyes, sans everything, that's the end of this particular episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've been listening, and look forward to seeing you for the next slide.